Hello SGD, Sacred Geometry Decoded, and I'm going to put this Geek37's video about A4 paper and the connections in there. A very interesting piece of info. Also, I'll put a link to Secrets to Measuring a Piece of Paper, Cliff Stoll on Numberphile. Everything he does I love. I think he's brilliant, and he asks really interesting questions, and especially this Secrets to Measuring a Piece of Paper has some nice philosophy in it in regards to how to think about things, not to make assumptions about certain things. And also one of the themes will be, so if you look up imperial versus metric, this is what you get. But there is basically a unjustified hatred of the imperial system. I grew up in Australia at a time when metric was standard. Metric is wonderful, metric is convenient, but metric does not carry information, and especially amongst the computer age and a certain way of thinking is like dirty imperial system peasant, and somehow the glorious metric master race. And we'll get to that because the people who love computers in this modern age who actually don't realize that metric, the imperial system, imperial carries information. Metric is convenient. Imperial carries deep information, ancient knowledge. This is why those measure systems are so important. I'm going to get back to this, but talking about A4 paper and A4 standard size. So this is from 1946 dictionary, and the last pages. So like in your old exercise book, on the last page they would have, usually they used to have, I'm not sure, conversion charts between there. And what we have is that the old imperial system, which I used to believe, so it was confusing. Well, actually, it is not. There's brilliant information in there, and it's just a matter of understanding the system behind it. Really, if you can grasp a few numbers, 144, 108, or basically the 12, and it's wonderful systems in there. And so this is one page, and we have the different measures which carries profound, extraordinary, astronomical, geometric, musical, arithmetic in there. And so metric is easier, imperial is a little bit more difficult, but it carries profound information in a very deep level. And but also just to point out that each different industry, so for instance, avoirdupois, so that's, I think it translates to French to have weight, but we also have the apothecary's weight. Apothecary was a pharmacist. We have the so different systems. So meat would be weighed in a different format. So one aspect of this is consider the as Americans you have 12 buns would be the standard, but they sell hot dogs in 10. This is part of an important feature. For instance, the 12 buns, a baker's dozen, had to do with strict laws about having a standard measure of weight for a loaf of bread, so that bakers did not cheat. Or, each loaf was meant to have a certain weight, therefore a certain amount of calories, basically, which meant that a loaf of bread would be enough nutrition per person. So that's where the legacy of the 10 hot dogs versus the 12 buns comes from, because the 10 hot dogs was also related to a standard of measure of meat as well. So meat weight and also bread and flour weights. Man is the measure of all things. So just like a chain is 66 feet is how long an ox could plow before resting, or an acre, one chain by 10 chains, is how long a plow team could work per day. So the ancient measure systems of meat and food were actually connected to the nutritional needs of a worker and connected to the work output, as in horsepower. So we have different units of, and they're actually all the same. It's just when you think about when they talk about them, they're connected, and once you sort of understand one, you'll get the others. We have different. It would appear to be complicated, but it's actually, once you get the grasp it, it's actually all linked, and links to beautiful numbers, overflowing with information. Once you learn the system, you start to realize the connections between music, astronomy, geometry, and arithmetic. So that's one example. Now we also have, let's go to, and I'll bring this up because of paper. So we also have paper weights. Now, okay, 132000 fish is one last. Glass weights, timber weights. So for instance, where would we be? 108 cubic feet is one stack of timber. So 112, for instance, 265 minus 153, as in the vesica, is 112. And that's, of course, is a square root of 3, best approximation for whole number approximation. Two hogsheads, or one pipe, or one butt, is 108 gallons. Ale and beer, butter and cheese, and these different weights, and there's actually 56 pounds, that's 112 divided by 2. There's a lovely series of connections between them. Cloth measure. So, for instance, 27 inches, one Flemish L, 45 inches, one English L, 54 inches, one French L. We'll get to that as well, because the V&E system, but you can straw and weight that 36, 56, 36. It's yes, it's all connected. Wonderful geometric connections. But here is some paper sizes. So in regards to A4 paper, but the different, even the way paper was weighed and measured has extraordinary series of information in there, and you just scratch the surface and you find this thing happening all over. What else we have? British and metric equivalents, capacity. So if you worked in a particular trade, you'd probably work with quarts, but if you worked in another trade, you'd work with another unit. However, they're actually linked. It's just and so metric is convenient, no doubt. I love the base 10 number system. I'm not poo-pooing metric. However, there is no information in metric. It's convenient, but we do these things not because they are easy. We do them because they are hard. And this added level, people back in the day, because they were using this, well, that's the dumbing down of the culture. That's one of the benefits of metric, but the opposition. What's the downside of metric? Well, dumbing down. And so, for instance, this hatred of metric, and it tends to be, well, here's the thing. 720p. Computers are still using this base 12 metric system because it is superior in so many ways. 1440 is another example. Now, full HD 1080, especially in Australia, which has done it remarkably, 108, and ancient measure systems connected to 108. Divide 10 by 3, 3.333. But on the base 12 system, and 12 inches per foot, you can divide it by quarters, you can divide it by thirds, and get a nice whole number. That's why often you'll find even in the metric system, they'll sell lengths of timber at 1.2 meters. Not 1 meter, 1.2, because I can divide it by thirds, I can divide it by quarters. And this goes back quite some time. That's why these numbers were essentially sacred across time, across religion, across cultures. Now, in regards to, here's another aspect. So you can, for Geek37, because he was just looking at paper weights. So here's some other paper sizes, and you should be able to get the resolutions not so bad. You'll be able to do a screenshot to get there, because there's a lot of stuff going on in here. But we also had, where was cloth measures? So you're measuring wool cloth. Okay, so 27 inches a Flemish L, 45 inches an English L, 54 inches a French L. And let's go. This is in St. Stephen's Cathedral in Vienna. And we have these measure bars. Once again, the prototype bar, a standard of measure. And so we have a drapery L, so curtains type of stuff. And we also have the linen L, or Viennese yard. And what happens is that they're at a ratio of, well, the square root of 3. So the 30, 60, 90 degree set square you get from the vesica. one half of an equilateral triangle, 90 degrees. And so one French L, so again, so French L, one Flemish L, one French L, and the ratio between drapery L and linen L is the square root of 3. So those are, yes, multiple levels, multiple dimensions, multiple efficiencies. And once you work the base 12 system against the base 10, 6/5, it's just, there's so much going on in regards to here, and we're losing this. And it's the dumbing down of a culture. Metric is convenient. Imperial carries information. That's why in cross the world, cross time, cross cultures, in the architecture, in the sacred text, they always return to these same profound numbers such as 144 or 72 or 108, because they're not only have astronomical, especially, connections, but they're also, in a practical sense, they're at least the equivalent of metric. They're not as convenient. They require a little bit more thinking, but once you get adapted to them, as I was so opposed to Imperial. I grew up metric, and then I was forced to learn Imperial because my boss was working on feet, didn't want to hear the word meters. I had to learn feet, and then later on I was introduced to sacred architecture, sacred geometry, and bang, yes, there is deeper levels here. It is more profound. This carries information. Metric is convenient. It's simple. It's easy. This system is not. And so much hate in regards to the Imperial system because they don't understand it. As I was before, they don't understand what's going on in here. It's embedded. And even the metric system, 1.2 as a standard of selling timber, for instance, because it's better in so many other ways. It's not as convenient, but if you get adapted to it, well, it actually lifts you up, makes you, because if you're only working on tens, you can only do tens, you only can do 100s, you only can do 1000s. Work off Imperial, you get 3, 4s, 12s, 60s, and then it works your way up to 273. Yes, so just a response to Geek37 looking at the paper connections, and again I'll just end that there where we can see the different sizes of paper for different applications, and that was important because you can't just have a standard size of paper for everything. Yeah, there's different reasons for it, and that's why this is superior. Must be said, it is a superior system because it allows for different uses, for different trades, for different applications. And with that, hope you enjoyed. Have a good one. All is number 12s. Cheers.